So he steps out for a walk to think of things that are not related to the walk, but could be provoked by engaging in motion, some such that the feet, by retracting into the torso and accumulating a step forward at rhythm with the shifting of his weight, would provoke different kinds of cool ideas, such as this: thought, a deplorable vacuum. So he puts the thing on its own. A sense arises that it is useless, only the part of a greater machine. The difference here is that in relation to the universe, I guess, the part can exist with its own function without a connection to the machine, just as the unreal mind can exist without the body, though it is still the part of a body. To me, in relation to the universe, the part has no connection to any greater machine. It just happens to follow the same pattern. Children, for example, marching in a single file in a line led by no one. Speed without velocity, going in no direction, neither decreasing nor increasing, yet movement is there. For example, the drummer learns to swing on some internal axis and follows rhythm in a more competent manner than before. Circular motion is needed in order to hit detailed contours, which are still fixed points. In other words, motion is needed to stop. It is the space between each fixed point that is important, and how they differ lies movement. Idea: movement as an unthinkable force between two poles. Remove the poles and movement no longer exists. Nothingness. The soul in me is infinite, and travels the margin between these two poles, one the beginning and the other the end, silently directing the present. Something vital is lost in interpreting this freak of nature. I suppose that what is lost burrows somewhere into the beautiful things, not fully proven, disproved by one particular hole in the argument, which itself becomes law. Truth, 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 truth. The system of thinking is deficient in order to engender the growth of ideas through fragments of understanding. It is odd that these partial laws, disproved by laws that are disproved, are partial truths. Where is the origin of truth, which has been led so far into fragments of itself? Intuition. Do not see the truth in my words, except by intuition. And intuition is the law. Because the law is intuitive, it will be disproved through judgment, thereby perpetuating my cause. Blake wished to burn through the universe. I assume that there is no universe but in the burning. One is more accurately honoring the dizzy diversity of the universe by attempting to escape many definition of it and arrive at an idea that one assumes would speak to his or her originality and how much it differs from the apparent motives of that universe. However, one is more original in swerving away from such motives unconsciously, without forethought as to their possible value and without thinking of such things ever again, rather than in adherence to a cheap philosophical stance. There's no such thing as limiting the subject. Each limit contains much within the subject, beneath the subject. A gross amount of information is possible to be discovered beneath and within the subject. There is, however, such a thing as being too limitless, so that one does not attach any end to the means and allows the means to extend forever, until what it describes is no subject at all. Instead of emancipating the mind, such refusal to accept a single thematic truth or unifying aspect of something will paradoxically limit whatever philosophy is pursued. This is, to my horror, a unique flaw in me: the inability to narrow down vague, though limitless, assumptions to concrete and thus quite poignant, though lesser, laws. For the time being, that's the only way to approach things, by enacting limits. Duh. And yet no limits are there. Merely thought is limited. We must conform the process of ideas to the process of human thinking. And all thinking is, to me at least, the constant struggle to put up barriers and gain over the limitless, infinite ideal with small proofs and finite corollaries. I think outside the box. I find that my thinking has led me into another box from which I must be perpetually freed and confined. and freed again. Until, that is, I die of exhaustion. One must give up being freed eventually, or else find insanity growing like a fungus in their brains. With each limit recognized, there is another beyond. This other shall hint at being found, at being able to be found, and yet is not, and is only another box by which I throw the shape of my prospects, only to have them lose their power with each box that is entered, with each limit that is broken, with each relevant fiction. Though fiction supremely resonates with those who live in the real world, they're clustered within their own distrust of that reality, thinking it malevolent. A perfected means to an end that before had been greatly flawed, then altered itself unnaturally to fit the situation. However, the situation is fraught, ill-formed, beastly, and so they learn to make reality into a thing, but the thing moves like art, defeating the purposes of making it a thing. That is, it goes between translation into beauty and clarity and mediocrity and muddled shapes, a circle with stages. In each stage of the circle there are indeed small developments in the quickness of motion between the false words and clear words, both of which in time perhaps become less false, but never true, insofar as these words will always contain insincerity and falsehood. Theory. The history of art revolves in the same fashion as the personal history of the afflatus of the artist. In other words, the history of art will adhere to the pattern mentioned above, moving in circles that, though through the centrifugal force of the spirit, will stray from the axis and yet slowly improve, but only between long stages of mediocrity. I think we are, as of now, at the final stage of this crucial impotence, this wane that is the harbinger of artistic revolution. So, we made a thing, so now we must say the thing. I wish to have it said in words that limit discussion, like an old Russian who has made the finality clear, a breast word with an insubordinate subordinate by a board of tranquility, so that at first glance serenity loses its perpetuity and becomes a mask, a joke for the cosmos to understand, while the serious enacts in the reader a type of delirium without cause, merely confusion is there. I want a poem, since words are the poem, that could be described with false critique more easily, and then made oblique when approached scientifically. The poem will be engulfed by emptiness, which itself could stand alone as prophecy for a world without euphony and cleanliness. The words, and each word is a void, and the void is filled immediately, as a man who has given up finding in his dreams any manner of concrete vision to attach to the symbol, which itself is bleak and haphazard. And thus, in giving it its own meaning, will elucidate without properly accounting for all that need be accounted for. The logic of spaces is incongruous, because each space lives in the fact without being the fact. Between the fact, space alters itself, grows feebler in the description, when the fact implants even partial intricacy and makes new demands upon the reader. I want a poem that purse limits could outline but not touch, and the dark fallacy remains there, remains in the spaces, the lost vastness that imitates vastness, and like the maculate stars further than ages go, twiddling with definition, and yet nothing can be defined in the poem. It will exist by itself, a loam of materials corrupted, made fallow through overuse, and the ethereal made concrete, while the concrete dissolves in embryonic dogma, flawed mantra. The instant described is viewless though present, a factual grafting together of participant spaces, which mesh false. The sojourn thing, finally disclosed, gives way to a response. Lacking composure, the answer dies in a spin and haunts an ear. There were intense relationships of sound, stall, and fear. The heavy bound toward the phonic sentiment suddenly drooped below the ancient minute from the fresher one, and all has come undone by time, and time has robbed us of the difference between the prattle of your coarse words and the ears it takes to consume them in the brain. I've not listened to the throat. The throat swallows what could have been lost anyway. The words themselves are shallow and corrupted by malapropism, fluting the schism of the callow personage, mocking over spite. The hash of rested thought from brain cannot be explained fully. Cannot be explained. How one dream leads to another dream. Though someone spoke, it seemed comprised of unmentionable smoke. and the reality, the fictive being, stands among astronomers, collecting all. She stands as whisper of this communication. The whisper is a mutable reality made trivial by slowness and turned into deceit. And running the fickle beat upon the highness of fictive things, connecting dream to dream, alters both a little bit in the translation. And so you said your thing for me to understand. Before I could, the pause agape delineated things, so that the concrete stature, previously unheard, weighed down the words, reducing what you said to concrete pith, rather than variable in the motion of sound. They turned as stone to pebble, into silent rubble. Thoughts unlearned.